About to start homeschooling and you just don't know where to start, and you are searching online and you're asking all your friends for help, and you know that the start of the school year is fast approaching. What do you do? My phone is ringing off the hook like crazy right now, parents in exactly the same situation as you are. And I want to offer you the same advice that I'm giving to all of them, because I feel like I'm giving the same advice every single day. It seems like there are 6 most common mistakes that these new homeschool parents are making. So let's just cover them all right here so that you don't have to make these mistakes. First of all, my parents began homeschooling in 1983. I tell this story very often. And when they began homeschooling, there weren't any homeschool resources available to them. And so they went in, dove in with the best intentions, and they did a lot of things right. And they also made a lot of mistakes. Nice thing is that now we are entering third generation of this modern homeschool era, and you don't have to make mistakes from reinventing the wheel anymore. You can learn so much from the people who have gone before you, because they have made their mistakes and they have also done things really, really well. And they're able to share their wisdom with you and what works and what doesn't work, and some tricks of the trade, so that you can just build on their wisdom. All right, so here's the first thing that you want to avoid: doing what the school system does. It's normal, it's obvious to think that if we're going to homeschool that we have to do what the school's doing, but the school was designed in a very specific way, almost as a synthesis of what should be happening in the home. There are so many things that children are learning in the schools that can very easily be learned in daily life at home. We just wrapped up an 8-part webinar series on special needs, on learning disabilities. We had experts come in, speech and language pathologists, developmental optometrists, clinical psychologists. We had OT. We had the whole gamut of professionals who came in and talked to us about what to do with a child with learning disabilities, and they all echoed the same thing: play. So many of the developmental delays, the learning disabilities, those barriers can be overcome in large part through some very deliberate games at home. And I'm talking getting outside and running around, getting down and exploring. Working with Play-Doh even is a wonderful thing that helps so many of the child's cognitive functions. So there are so many, chess and board games, and so many of these things are so wonderful. We see right now this surge in learning disabilities, and we have all these resources and professionals in the school, and what they're doing with these children is they're playing games with them. So if you think, how am I going to do school at home, I would recommend that you incorporate a lot of playtime. And that's not going to look like school, obviously. If you have a lot of playtimes, very deliberate, very strategic, kind of um, active work, as well as cognitive brain games, you're going to really go a long way, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Now, school isn't always fun, but at home it can be when you start to incorporate that. Also, there are things you're going to learn in the daily life, in cooking and in chores and in the way the family goes about its daily business, is a massive opportunity to practice the work that we learn in textbooks. And so many of the drills that we would be doing in textbooks, we can be doing as we are applying in real life. So that's one huge tip. Do not try to do what the schools are doing. Homeschool is going to look very, very different. And I would argue better. All right, mistake number 2. Going with the full box curriculum set. You're going to hear the homeschool salesman all over the internet say, just buy this box set and we'll do it all for you. We'll set your schedule for you. We'll keep track of the transcripts for you. We will give you all the books and the lesson plans, and so that all you have to do is set your child in front of it basically and go. I like to refer to this as something like appliance homeschooling. It's a very American way of going about it. We like to put dishes in the dishwasher and turn it on. We like to put clothes in the wash machine and just turn it on and expect the job to be done. We then carry that over to bringing up children, and we think that maybe we can set them in front of a computer and they will learn. But this isn't the way we're designed to learn, so it's not going to work very well. When you buy a full box set, it's all going to be all 3rd grade work, and you're going to have 8 subjects or more. Well, no child is ever going to be fully at a 3rd grade level in all 8 subjects. It just isn't ever going to work that way, and this is what makes actual children in schools struggle so much, because they can really fall far behind in grammar, but they're really good at math. And so you have this uneven balance where you might need to, if you're going to order your curriculum based on your child's needs and not just the full box set, you might be buying him a 1st grade English and grammar book, and you might be buying him a 5th grade math book. And that's a very wide range, and I'm exaggerating just a little bit. Sometimes it happens for real, but you can see that there are different levels at which you can buy your curriculum for the same student. If you buy the full out of the box set, you're not going to take into account the child's actual academic level, much less his learning style, or if there are any learning disabilities or gifted needs that the child has. So I would encourage you to steer away from the full box set. Now, that's not to say don't buy anything from Seton, don't buy anything from Rebecca or Colby Academies. These are really great publishers that have some really good textbooks. But what I would say is do not go just buy the whole set for the grade level. You're going to be very, very frustrated, especially in the younger grades. In the younger grades, you don't need all those books. You don't need a history book for a 1st grader. Make sure you're reading a lot of stories that include historical facts. At Thanksgiving, you're talking about the history of Thanksgiving. At Christmas, you're talking about old world history of the time of Christ. At the 4th of July, you're talking about these great stories of American patriots. There are great springboards at 1st grade that you can start to tell all these stories. Facts and dates, they don't stick. So many people who hate history, for example, hate it because it was memorizing so many facts and places and names. But we do remember great stories. So tell great stories and your history is done. And the same thing is actually true with science when you're in the younger ages, especially. If you go for a nature walk with a little book in hand to identify birds and plants, and you're set. If you have Play-Doh and you're making little sculptures of the Earth's core, you have earth science. You're doing the old volcano experiments, picking up rocks and trying to identify them. Those are things you don't need in any way a textbook, and you certainly don't need testing. So stay away from the full box sets, and anyone who says we're going to create your schedule, we're going to create your lesson plan for you. That might seem like it's easy, but I promise you the easier way is for you to figure out up front, do the hard work up front, and figure out what's best for your family, and then be very deliberate moving forward. You're going to have much more peace and much more success in your homeschool doing it that way. All right, number 3, not seeking support. As I mentioned at the beginning of this, parents go into homeschooling and they think that they can figure it out as they go. You see, you have 2 extremes. Either you want to buy it all done for you or you want to do it entirely by yourself. But we do have 2 generations of homeschoolers at this point. And if you find a good homeschool mentor, then you're going to have a lot more success. You won't repeat the mistakes of the people who have gone before you, and you can learn from what they have learned. This is the advantage of the Foundations Workshop. This is exactly what we teach. We've distilled all these great lessons of what we've learned over the years, of what works and what doesn't work, and how to find your own way. And that's all there so that you don't have to make mistakes. Get a mentor, get a co-op, get support if you need a tutor in a subject that you feel like you're not capable to teach. Get help. All right. Number 4 is not setting a routine before the school year begins. You need to set your routine before the school year begins. This is really important. How do you do that? Well, in early August, I always, every year, begin waking up my children at the time that they will be expected to wake up during the school year. So for us, that's at 8 a.m. They wake up at 8 a.m. and they get to get work right away with their morning chores. And their morning chores are make their bed, eat breakfast, clean up their breakfast dishes, empty the dishwasher, brush their teeth, and get dressed. That's simple. That's what their morning chores are. So there's this routine of they are expected, starting early August, to have this routine absolutely down so that they are done by 9 a.m. every morning. Because once we get into the school year, I expect of them that they are ready to start school at 9 a.m. That's in my home. I'm not saying that that's what your schedule needs to be. The specifics of your schedule might be different. But whatever it is, the children have to be accustomed to that routine. We start in August eating lunch at noon, sharp, every single day, and get into the habit of putting the dishes away after lunch. Dinner time schedule and family read-alouds begin in August. We get into that routine. So after dinner, after the dishes are done, we sit down and we read family read-alouds. We end up with this benchmark of a routine, a schedule, a pattern to the day, so that pattern is not it's something that we have to learn. We don't want to just dump this huge workload and new schedule on children. You're going to get resistance and a flashback. So we set the schedule before we introduce the schoolwork. And now if you also want to establish a work time, this is the time where we will be doing schoolwork. Before you've introduced the schoolwork, you might want to start using that time as board game time, card game time, something like that, where it's actual, family time together, sitting around the table doing something very deliberate. So that when all you will have to do at that time, that schedule is already established, all you'll need to do is swap out the board game for your math book. And no, it's not as much fun as the math book, but also if you're doing proper strategy games, that you have your children already starting to use those different thinking functions before the curriculum is brought out. So really helpful trick, establish your routine before the school year begins, and then don't begin by just introducing 8 subjects in one day on September 1st. First introduce the most difficult 1 or 2, and then add in the next week, maybe another 2 subjects. So we might begin with, we begin with the routine, and then we add in math, and then we might add in 3 days to a week later, we'll add in grammar and writing. And then we will introduce the following week their regular ongoing reading assignments, which may double with their history assignments, may not. And we'll add in then um, history and science. And as we move on, then we'll introduce social studies, and we'll do our best to combine as many of these subjects together into one time frame as possible. But the point is that we're not just dumping it all on them at the same time. So that's very important. Ease them into the school year and ease yourself in the school year. Get that routine down. Very important. All right. Mistake number 5, not igniting a love for learning. And this love for learning begins with yourself. Ignite your own love of learning. You can't give what you don't have, and children cannot learn unless they are passionate about learning, unless they get excited about what they're learning. So you don't have to get excited about algebra, but you do have to light a fire in yourself that makes you want to learn new things, that you can really nerd out over for the first time being able to identify new plants, new birds, for understanding new historical facts, for looking at a map and saying, I never knew that was where that country was or that river was, or oh, that, we always, we hear about crossing the Danube. I didn't realize that was where that river is, and now I understand the geography, and all of a sudden you start putting all this context together, and just allow yourself to get excited about little things like that, because that's where the fire is going to come from. That's going to intrigue your children and bring them into it, and it's also going to help you to avoid burnout. If you are learning along with your children, you're going to stay enthusiastic about the learning. You're going to be able to better play games in relation to what you're learning. And you're going to also be able to spread that to them and help them to engage in that. It's going to build a relationship around learning with your family. That's really what the whole point is. Everything in my family is one of the things I love about homeschooling is that our relationship, my children and my relationship, is centered around our love for knowledge. Our conversations are about interesting things we've learned, interesting things we've built, interesting things we're doing together. And my children and I, we have a pact. We have a life goal that when they have graduated college, we will all go on an archaeological dig together. That's what we all want to do together, and we're all excited and passionate about it, except for my one child who has to be contrary about everything. But that's okay. He let him do him. He'll be fine. All right, finally, the biggest mistake that homeschool parents make is not integrating the homeschool with their family life. There becomes a conflict. How am I going to keep my house clean and spend hours doing book work? How am I going to manage getting in the doctor's appointments or running my errands or keeping up with my social life or my marriage or all the other responsibilities, because you're so much more than a homeschool mom? Well, the answer to this really circles back around to the very beginning. Don't try to do what they do in the schools at your home. You find a way to completely integrate learning. Completely work it through so that your learning is woven in through your day. Yes, you have a routine, and yes, you do textbook work if you choose to, but you make sure that this fits properly into the flow of the day and is cooperative with the personalities and the scheduling needs and the just the lifestyle of your family. And when you start to pull all these factors together, your homeschooling becomes a joy and not a burden. You don't have to be excited about homeschooling going in, but when you get good at it by avoiding these 6 mistakes, you are going to find that you're really good at it. And it's a lot easier than you would have expected. I'm Judith Dolman. If you have any other questions about homeschooling or about how to get started for the year, feel free to reach out to me. I'm always available to anyone who needs help with homeschooling. You can send me a private message here through Facebook, or you can contact me by email at judith@sophiahomeschool.com.